Hi guys, I am here with Carol J.S. Roth, author of The Entrepreneur Equation. And you know what, this is kind of weird. Say hi, Carol.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. Very exciting.
It's kind of neat because, you know what, I know that I'm waving while I'm also standing on the stage because we managed to grab Carol to pre-record this to make sure that we could get this topic on the agenda. Carol, this is a topic that's so on my heart. I feel like the parent who has been trying to teach this, who is getting ignored, quite frankly. And so I'm like delighted to bring you because with all of your experience, I'm hoping people will really hear really deeply the importance of this idea of an exit strategy for their small business. Small business owners think it's not for them. They think it's only for big companies. So will you start by telling us what the heck these are?
Well, first of all, Andrea, nobody should ever ignore you. They do that at their own peril. And those pink shoes, we joked that they were Michael Port's shoes, which I know. Hi, Michael. Are those your shoes? No. They're actually my shoes. Michael just likes to lay claim to them. And they're the shoes that go with my Carol Roth Entrepreneur Equation fashion doll. I think I'm officially the first business strategist to have my own fashion doll. And so you have the miniature version of the real version that I'm wearing on the cover of my book that I borrowed from Michael Port.
Oh, I love it. And so, you know, it's inspiring, quite frankly, that someone who would, the same brain that would have these, is also the person with your street cred, with your experience. You know, somewhere in your bio you use the B word, you know, billion. You want to say a little bit about that?
That B word. Because there are a number of B words that describe Andrea, so I'm glad you clarified which one we were talking about. So yes, I have helped companies raise over $1 billion in capital and complete successfully over $750 million in merger and acquisition transactions. So we have played with companies that are very small and very large and everybody in between to see the good, bad, and the ugly and have a lot of depth and breadth of experience to bring to bear.
Yeah, exciting. One of the first things I was hoping you could clarify is the difference between cash flow and equity. I mean, they're very different, so you could say a lot, I'm sure. But I work with a lot of people who focus only on cash flow, Carol. Help! What do we do with this?
Okay, so let's break this down in a way that we can understand. So when you are building your business and you're generating revenue, you have your expenses, and at the end of the day, if there's anything left over that you don't have to reinvest into the business, that is the cash flow from your business. And that's money that you can put in your pocket, or you can do whatever you want with. You can bonus out all your employees, you can throw it up into the sky, you can't reinvest it into your business, hopefully in a way to make it grow. And so that's what a lot of people in small business focus on. How much money am I taking out, am I producing from the business after I take it into account everything else that I have going on at the end of the day? And, you know, that's very important to people. However, it's very different from the reason a lot of other people build businesses, which is for equity value. And the equity value is really, the best way I can explain it is the value that you created in your business that's apart from you, that stands alone from whatever's happening on a day-to-day basis. So it's not just any period of time, you know, you did really well this year, you're taking home $100,000. It's what is that business when you sell it at the end of the day, or if somebody else wanted to come into the business, what is the value of the business apart from you that you're creating? And the more that you can create that, a number of things happen. One that I think is sort of the first level dream, at least from my perspective for a lot of small business owners, Andrea, is that you can actually perhaps take a vacation at some point in time. I know, go figure. And that your business will continue to run without you. And that's a huge thing. A lot of us are really tied to our business emotionally, physically, and otherwise. But you really want to have something that eventually you can take a little bit of a step aside from. And then on a longer term scale, that if you create enough value in this entity, in this business, that's something that you can actually sell. And what's so critical about that is that most entrepreneurs, the reason people go into business to make the big bucks, the way most entrepreneurs make those big bucks is through the sale, that they've built up something of value that they can hand off. And it's not just about making that money, but it's about employing people, it's about leaving a legacy, it's about taking whatever it is that you've created and seeing it just continue on after you're done. Whether you want to retire or you have other situations going on, or maybe you just want to move on to the next thing. But it's about creating this value around the business that's not just you.
And I think, would you agree, Carol, that there are pitfalls to building only for cash flow and only for equity? And oftentimes I see one or the other kind of mentality, right? Somebody's building only for equity and they're starving, eating, saltines from the cafeteria to stay alive while they're building this equity and legacy. And then on the other hand, people who very seductively look like they're doing so well, multi-million dollars worth of cash flow, but so precarious in so many ways in terms of zero equity. It's frightening, actually.
Yeah, it's about balance. It's like everything else in our life, right? It's like work-life balance, right? There's some people who just focus on their life and works a pittance to the side, and there's some people who spend all their energy and, have no friends and family. And so it's about balance. You do want to be able to earn a living, but you also have to think about what's your long-term goal. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this to earn a living, or are you doing this to create something of value? Because you can have a job and earn a living, and if you're going to take if you're going to take on the risk, okay, you're really risking a lot. You're putting your time and your money and your effort to work here. So if you're going to do that, shouldn't you have the bigger payday at the end of the day to justify the risk you're taking on? If you could do almost the same thing with a job, then why are you doing this? And I know that there are other issues, there are quality of life issues as well, but this is one component that I think is really, really important to think about and establish that goal, because it really does drive the decision process of your business, depending on if your goal is to sell it or not sell it.
Right. I want to get into that. I think one of the big myths or the big obstacles or objections people have when they're a small business, like quite a small business, is that, well, I can't, there's no way for me to do that. All there really is me. I mean, a very simple example just to kick it off, because I want to ask you what kinds of businesses are sellable. There's a difference between a small business that has an email list and that doesn't. For example, that could be seen, right, as an asset or equity in the business. What other kinds of things make a business sellable, or how would you put that in terms of, because everyone's listening is like, okay, we're sold. We want to be able to sell our business. What are the first steps?
So I think the first thing is, when you look at your business, how much of it is dependent upon you? If you were to leave the business, could somebody else step in easily to that role and have it go on, not just at the level that you have it currently, but hopefully growing it to the next level? So if the only reason people are doing business is because they want to do business with you, if you are the rock star and you leave and they don't want to do business with anybody but you don't have a sellable business. So even if you do have an email list in that situation, if it's all dependent on your brand name and it's not about your content or what you're providing, then you know what? You probably don't have an asset to sell. So selling is really about creating these assets in your business, and it's about your relationship with your customers. It can be around content or products and services, all these things that hopefully aren't just about you. They're based on your values, and they're based on your focus and your execution, and you're the one that lays the foundation for them. But have you created something other than just yourself? I'll give you a perfect example. My poor mother started one of the very first gift basket companies ever in 1980. And it was called Gift Services, and it's a long story, so I won't bore you with the whole thing. But the key is that she spent all this time doing these perfectly, organized gift baskets. Everything, the ribbon was curled the right way, and she was doing everything, her and her partner. And so they worked at this for about 10 years, 50 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, and 10 years later, do you want to guess it, how much they were making per hour? Drum roll?
$2?
$4 an hour. They were hauling in $4 an hour for all of this work. And the funny part is they were paying me more money to babysit my sister after school while they went to work at this business. And then when they realized the model wasn't sustainable, it was like, okay, well, let's sell the business. Well, they hadn't created anything because there was no way somebody could come in, even if they wanted to, and recreate these gift baskets. Contrast that with some of the really great gift basket providers today, Wine Country Gift Baskets or giftbasket.com, that perhaps don't have that perfect creative edge. They may be not quite as beautiful, but they still provide a lot of value to the customer. And they're very, much in a system where they've got a whole bunch of people, and it's not that Sherry was curling the ribbon in a certain way. That's not why someone is buying it. They're buying it to fill a customer need. And so that's why those businesses are successful and have equity value, and while my mom wasted 10 years of her life.
Well, from that one respect, I'll give you that. But, yes. Okay. Well, that's a beautiful story because I know in the room we have everyone from, graphic designers to real estate agents to, lawn mowing, like all sorts of businesses, including those with intellectual property. Do you have any advice for people with information products and so on who, like, if they want to get started, what's one little thing that they could, like, I hear you saying make a system or a program that isn't driven by the personality, that's separate from the person.
Or even content that's evergreen. One of my favorite examples, Andrea, is a gentleman who happens to be a good friend of mine named Dave Taylor. And he has a business called AskDaveTaylor.com. And he's a perfect example of somebody who's balancing quality of life and creating something with equity value. If you've never been to AskDaveTaylor.com, he is a technology guru. He helps troubleshoot technology. So if you're like me and your BlackBerry blows up every 5 seconds, good Dave, what's going on here? He's got a searchable, evergreen database of answers to questions. And even though technology is evolving, there's still a very large part of that that's relevant today and will be relevant 5 years from now and 10 years. So each week, he's adding just a couple of things to this database, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and yet he's spending very little time doing it. So he had to work really hard in the beginning, but now he's gotten to the point where he's just adding to it. And what he has here, even though his name's attached to it, people aren't coming to it because it's him. It's just a brand name that's associated with OK Technology Trouble Tips. So he could have anybody doing this. He could have anyone filling the content, and frankly, he could sell that to somebody else. There's value. And somebody would put a multiple of the cash flow. That's how we figure out how to sell a business, a multiple of the cash flow to purchase that business because it has value, and Dave can, go do whatever he wants, and there's still value to this business. So you can think about what can you do in terms of content that could be evergreen, that's relevant not just today, but 10 years from now, that's something that has a value. That's definitely an option. Even things like membership programs that could be an option that, again, hopefully are focused on the content or the brand or the service you're delivering and not so much on you as a person.
Yeah, I love it. And it's a great example, too, because, the name of the person is there, so people in the audience don't have to be like, oh, crap, my thing is called something to do with me. I've just broken the first rule, but it clearly can still be done. At a certain point, the name might live on. It's kind of like Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders is no longer alive, right? It's named after him.
I don't think he is alive, although I have seen some things overseas where people think that he is the president of the United States, which I do not believe that he is.
I think he's somewhere having, a chicken wing with Elvis somewhere on the planet.
So comparing fashion tips, clearly.
So let's presume then moving forward that we have a business owner, the business owners who are listening and watching, who are like, okay, I would like to know more about this process of selling. What you described something about the difference between a financial and a strategic buyer. I'd love to hear you say just a little bit about that, if you could.
Sure. So it used to be that somebody who was going to buy your business was probably a competitor. Somebody who said, okay, well, we're missing a part of this market, or we don't like the fact you're competing against us, and so we see something that we call synergies, which means 1 + 1 = 3 when you put our businesses together, and because of that, you are an attractive candidate. Well, what's happened over the past, call it 15 or 20 years, is that people realize, hey, I can actually buy a business as an investment and myself turn that over in 3, 5, 7, or 10 years, and that's going to be what I bring to the table. And so those people who have pools of capital are really called financial buyers. And they're very, very different animals, and you have to plan for each of them accordingly. Because a financial buyer, most of the time, doesn't want to run the business. They want to bring money to the table, hopefully get you some liquidity, some of your equity value taken off the table, but they want you to stay in the business. And they want to hopefully provide some more money to grow the business or maybe acquire other businesses and have a bigger pie that you both can sell 3 to 5 to 7 years later, either to another financial buyer or to a strategic buyer. So if you're planning for them, you can't wait until the day you want to retire and then talk to a financial buyer, because they have a 3 to 5 year time window where they're saying, hey, you know what's going on in this business, and we don't, and we need you to be there, and that's what we're banking on. So it's a thought process that you may come out in a couple stages. You may take your money out of the business, your stake, your ownership in the business, out in a couple of different stages instead of in one fell swoop. On the other hand, strategic buyers are somebody who probably has a management team in place, and the first thing they may do is fire everybody on your staff. They may not, depending on, if you have people who fill a different need, but if you both have, chief financial officers, you don't need 2 of them if you put the company together. So that may be how they create some value, is by the reality of getting rid of some position. And those types of buyers, again, may not want you to be there, may not need you to be there, or they may want you for a year or 2 just to do a transition. So you have to work with advisors to really plan for this, because they're really different animals, and they both have different time frames. They both work at different paces. They both have different values that they put on business. So it's definitely a deep discussion, but at a very high level, you really do need to plan in advance and not just wait till the day that you want to sell your business to start thinking about these things.
Yeah, I'm getting flashes of this amazing mergers and acquisition brain, all the experience that you bring between creating fashion dolls and all these other deals, and how what you're bringing to the small business world is really, I can hardly wait for, you just had your book launch, we've talked about that, but can hardly wait until more and more of this stuff. But anyway, I digress. You talk about something called the...
Can I interrupt you, Andrea? I actually wanted to point out one other thing between financial and strategic buyer. And now I'm totally blanking on what it was. It was something that you were saying about the mergers and acquisitions brain and the time frames that we were doing. I will come back to you on that, because I'm sure that it will pop back into my head.
Yeah, I believe you. We'll actually probably see it. You'll go like this, and we'll go, oh, it came back.
Oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
You also talk about something, Carol, called the story. There's when you're looking at, it's almost like, I imagine in my background, it's like parents preparing their daughter for an arranged marriage. How do we craft this? How do we craft this? I know that's provocative to put in front of you, but how do we craft the story about our businesses to tell it in the most attractive way? How do we increase the value of our business so that when we're in this conversation, we're ready and we can stand to make the best deal possible? There's just so much material that you could teach about this, but could you walk us through a little bit of the process of what it feels like to actually be in that conversation?
Yeah, I think that when you think about a potential buyer, what are they looking for? They're looking for some need. They're seeing some need that's out there. Either if they're a financial buyer, they're seeing that customer need still that hasn't fully been serviced. Or if they're a strategic buyer, there's somebody who has a hole in their business, some customers perhaps that they want to bring over, or maybe it's existing customers that they want to have other products and services to be able to sell to. And so if you get in their mindset and think about, if I could buy any company, what do I want? What am I going to look for? And you're going to look for somebody who's a leader and has a brand that's meaningful in some way, whether you're the only player, the dominant player of a niche, or you bring something, dominant customer relationship. But you really have to have something that's interesting and definable. And the more things that you have, the more leading market positions, the more, intellectual property that's protected, the more assets that you bring to the table, and this sort of what we call goodwill, this brand je ne sais quoi, the story piece of it, the sexier that you can make that, the higher the value that you can command. So if you think about beverages, there's a reason why Coca-Cola will have a higher multiple in the market than, so-and-so generic cola company. It's because they have that brand, and that brand is, more customers and leading market position and, huge recognition. But even if you're not Coca-Cola, even if you're just competing in your own market, what is it that you're doing better than anyone else? Where can you claim that you're number one, that you're leading, that you blow away the competition, that you have something proprietary? Because if somebody else can do it, then, their decision is buy or build. They have to make a decision. We could put a certain amount of money and build this ourselves, but we're going to buy you to leapfrog and to get something else. So you really have to make that argument. There's a reason why they're buying you instead of building it, and I think that that's a huge distinction. And light bulbs did go off here. One other thing that you have to be cognizant of is that when you're building your business, if you are building it for sale, think about who might buy it at the end of the day and have that inform your choice of products and services. Simple enough example, I was working with a company in the group that had a food product and grocery store, and they were thinking about going into another product. Well, their first product resides on shelves, okay, shelves in the grocery store. The second product resides in the refrigerated section. Now, the challenge is that's totally different distribution for food companies. There are companies that do dry distribution where their trucks do not need to be refrigerated, and there are people who have refrigerated trucks and focus on that area of the store. So now if you're in two different areas, or it doesn't even have to be two different areas of the store, it could be two different types of stores or, different industries, it complicates things for your buyers, because it's the likelihood of finding one buyer that excels at both dry and the refrigerated, or at, being in healthcare and legal and accounting, is much more challenging. And so you've just narrowed the number of people who may want to buy your business, or they might just want to buy a piece of it. So as you're making these strategic decisions, think about, what layers of complexity does this add? And if I'm thinking about who's the perfect buyer for this business, are they going to want to be in all these different areas, or do I need to expand more within one industry or within the dry goods section or something, so that I haven't just completely killed my chances of selling this business when the time comes?
I love it. In making this maybe even more relevant to like an information business, or let's say an author, a trainer, a coaching business, I mean, I love to play chess in that way in my own mind. It's just like, oh, I know if we build it this way, I could just see Nightingale Conant or whatever, or, and my experience is very limited. So I would love, like, let's take our friend Michael Port, for example, who wrote the foreword to your book and all of that. Is there an example?
And those pink shoes I'm wearing on the cover?
That's right.
I can't help myself.
Well, it's a perfect example because, I mean, he's now built a software, and I'm sure he doesn't mind the free consulting that he'll get from this little snippet of the call. But, what would be an example in your mind as you see and you look at the chessboard of this playing field, who might be a perfect buyer for something like that? Or what do you see to help illuminate this?
Yeah, so I think in terms of somebody like Michael, one of the things I want to point out that I really like what he's done is the Book Yourself Solid system. Book Yourself Solid is a brand. I mean, yes, Michael is the guru and the expert behind that. But people understand Book Yourself Solid. He's got, coaches who do Book Yourself Solid. He now has this software. And so he's really creating this brand that lives separate from him. He's the shepherd. But it does fit very nicely. And I think that a publishing company might be interested in it. And, it's one of those things it's a little bit challenging because you need to do the research. But there are probably a whole number of different companies that could take either the content as it is today or adapt it. I mean, if you think about all these small business software service companies that are out there, I know that he's currently engaged with one of them, but that doesn't mean that, depending, I haven't looked at his contract, but depending if that's a short-term contract or if that just carves out a piece, that there wouldn't be somebody else who'd want to take that intellectual property and bring it into, their software system. So I think it could be in the publishing realm, the self-help realm, it could be software, it could be, other small business services that say, hey, we see that this is applicable to the other kinds of services that we're providing. And so, again, he has to think about it. Now, if Michael, in terms of Book Yourself Solid, then went and opened a restaurant, too, then I would kind of go, yeah, I'm not really sure who would buy the restaurant and the Book Yourself Solid system. Yeah, no idea. So I think that everything that he's done is really strategic and really fits nicely together versus being in two totally different worlds.
So just to bring it down into something really concrete as a final point, and then ask for your kind of final comments to our viewers today in the room. I know for me, one of the things I try to work on with clients is contracts and clean agreements. And when you're a small business, when you're a small business, it can feel like it's like, oh, do-de-do, who cares? Let me just get the client in the door and they paid their money. That's great for all sorts of reasons. And most of our viewers, the Wealthy Thought Leader participants are beyond this. But I'm just throwing this out as an example. For a buyer or for a buying or selling situation, to my mind, that clean contracts take on a whole new meaning, a whole new value.
Yeah, so thank you, Andrea, because this is a point of huge contention for me. I cannot tell you how many contracts I have seen other small business experts, so we'll call them, sign, that were just like, you're somebody who's giving business advice and you signed this contract? Why? Why? Please tell me. I do not understand. So this is a huge problem, and when you go to sell your business, the contractual relationships that you have may create upside if you have customers that have, you've been bound to, or may create downside. So you need to make sure that you have your house in order, which means that you understand them when you sign them, and that you keep track of them and actually do sign them. It's really critical. And if you're in the service business and you're creating information, if you don't clearly delineate with your clients that, hey, this is my information that I'm providing to you, they can claim ownership to it. And then there could be a fight. And so you think you've created all this great content, and someone said, no, I paid you. That's my content. That's not a conversation you want to be having. And so I'm a huge advocate of making everything super clear up front. I think when you're very clear up front, then everybody knows exactly what page everybody's on. And depending on who you're working with, personnel change. So even if you have a meeting of the mind with your best friend that works somewhere, they could be gone by the time you're done with the contract. And then the next person's like, I have no idea what was said. I can only rely on what's on this piece of paper. And so you would really do yourself a disservice. The more clients, things that you can wrap up, the more housekeeping things, the contracts, all the things that you have are so important, and that is part of what creates the value for your business. And so you need to make sure that, when there's upside, you've captured that, and when there's potentially an issue, that you've made sure that that's not an issue. Because if you go to sell your intellectual property and there's a point of contention, nobody is going to buy it. Nobody wants to deal with those open-ended situations. They want clarity.
Right. Why would they? But so, for people who are just starting out, which, I want to extend a ray of hope as along with the realism of the spinach in the teeth conversation. It's like, there's time to go back. Like, it's true that when you're just bootstrapping and you don't know if you have something, you might not invest in all that upfront stuff, but that along the way, and certainly, now that you have this wisdom from Carol, guys, it's a great time to go back then now and housekeep, like you say, tidy up.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that just like you would do spring cleaning in your house and things get out of order, go back and do it for your business. Just stop, take stock, go through your contracts. If you don't have contracts in place, just go back and say, hey, I realize that we never signed this. I know everything's done, but I just want to make sure that, we're both on the same page. And most people are pretty reasonable about it. And I know it's one of those issues where people don't like to pay lawyers, and they say, well, this is they're going to charge me $400 and for this contract, and do I really need it? Well, again, depends on your goal. If you want to build something that's of value, is $400 an appropriate investment? If it's something that, could get you an extra $20,000 or $100,000 at the end of the day. I mean, I can't answer that for you, but think about it that way. And so I know none of us like to pay lawyers. I don't like to pay lawyers, but it's a necessary evil. And when you have those tight contracts in place, it really does help. So make sure you do go back and do your housekeeping. And if you haven't done it, it's not too late. Just get your house in order. Just like never too late. I'm in the process of just having moved, and so we're trying to get the new place in order. And I may not fully do it now, but I will continue to work on it. So keep working on it.
Yeah, the lawyers who are participating are cheering in the room and on our simulcast. I think it's actually, you alluded to it because of your move. It's like when you're getting ready to sell your house. Do you replace the old furnace? Maybe. You just might.
Yeah, because sometimes you actually get, if you paint the walls, it may cost you $200 to paint the walls or $1,000 to paint the walls, but you get an extra $10,000 in value. So do you make that investment? If the investment pays off, that's the lens I use for everything. Do I do this? Is there a return on the investment that's plausible? If it's a good one, yes, of course I do it.
Yeah, love it. All right, well, Carol, font of wisdom, I know we're going to do some Q&A, so this is exciting. We'll get some real live questions from the room as a result of what you've fomented. But, it's such a passionate, we have this in common where it's just like, look, small business is really, it's just so cool. Like, it's such a cool, to create something from nothing and generate value. I mean, we could go on, right? But what's one last thing that you'd like to convey to the thought leaders in the room who, are going through everything that they're going through? What are your final words of wisdom for now before we sign off on this interview?
I think the final parting words I'd like to leave, and so appropriate that Michael's with you there with thinking big, but I'd like to jump on that bandwagon and push everybody to think bigger. I know that people are worried, like, oh, well, I don't want to become Walmart. Well, guess what? There's a big chasm between, being a solopreneur and Walmart, and you can still be a small business, but be, exponentially larger than you currently are. And so don't self-limit. If there is an opportunity to do more, really think about it and say, what's my downside here and what's the potential upside? Does this make sense for me? And feel free to push yourself. I mean, that's how we all grow and learn. And, it's never easy, but the payoff at the end of the day can be so rewarding in so many different ways. Again, not just financially, but leaving the legacy. If you've worked hard to build something and you really are creating value for people, don't you want that to endure? I would think that you wouldn't want that to go away when you're ready to retire. And so, again, you need to think about that today, not when you're ready to retire, so that you've planned appropriately.
Thank you, Carol, for everything you're doing. I mean, as with all of us, we could be doing so many different things, but you're choosing to lead the charge with such creativity and, spunk and, inspiring us that, it doesn't have to be that same old. The Entrepreneur Equation by Carol Roth. I highly, The Buzz, the new E-Myth with the sense of humor and a pair of pink high-heeled shoes. So glad you wrote it. So grateful for all your work. We're going to head to Q&A next, live with Carol Roth. Thanks for this time, Carol, to pre-record this part of it.